Hello everyone, Chaos here, and welcome to another old school RuneScape video. With Raids 3 just around the corner, there's no better time to talk about how the Tombs of Amascut will come to revolutionize the game, not only in terms of PVMing, but also how the economy will be shaped after the newest raid hits the live game. If you guys enjoyed today's upload, a subscription with notifications on and a like on the video would be greatly appreciated, and you can also join our Discord server to interact with me and our amazing community. I already cancelled all of my classes for the Raids 3 release, and I will be live streaming it every single day so we can learn together, and you don't want to miss that amazing content on the channel. Also, a very quick disclaimer, just like all of the financial videos and TikToks you watch online, I am not an expert and this video is not for me to tell you what to buy or what to sell, but we are just going to brainstorm how the Tombs of Amascut will shape the economy for new and existing items. And finally, the structure of this video will go as follows. I'll talk about another major piece of content and what it did to some important PVM items. I'll then briefly talk about smaller pieces of content that did something similar. And then we will talk about Raids 3 items as we finish that off with the last bit of information we know before the big release. All that being said, let's begin. So to give you some context and a quick history lesson, if you remember, Nex was added to Old School RuneScape on the 4th of January of 2022, and with her we had a very crazy market for a few days or even just a few weeks. If you are a brand new player, you may not know that Nex was added to RuneScape 2 all the way back in 2011, and ever since then she has had a prayer draining mechanic that was pretty devastating if players didn't have the appropriate gear and items to deal with her. Because of this, the Spectral Spirit Shield went from about 55 mil GP in September of 2021, all the way up to almost 100 mil right before the release. Now, if you were watching Twitch streamers at the time, you might recall people killing Nex in full Ancestral and also a Twisted Bow because of how the targeting mechanic works. Because of this, people started selling Spectrals and then panic buying Ancestrals, only to then figure out that you can avoid that specific mechanic and that you would be okay with full Armadillo. People then stuck to the Twisted Bow for a little bit, which sent the Spectral and Armadillo crossbow all the way down in price. Now that the dust has settled and that teams know a more effective way to kill Nex, if you have noticed, every single item surrounding her is fairly expensive. The Zerite crossbow has been hovering the 350 to 400 mil price tag, Armadillo armor and Pegations are at an all-time high, and of course all of the supplies needed to kill Nex are also fairly expensive, like Ruby Dragon Bolts, brews, restores, and of course food. Now, because of her drops, other items have been affected in a positive way. You might think that with the addition of the Torva armor, Bandos might have decreased in value since it's not the best in slot melee armor anymore. And those people might be incorrect. See, because of how Torva items are dropped, you need Bandos components to fix it, making Bandos still fairly relevant. At the time of making this video, the Bandos chestplate is at an all-time high on the Grand Exchange, showing that with the component mechanic, better items will not necessarily devalue objectively worse items. So that's a very quick glance at how a major PVM update can shape things around what you need to kill a boss, as well as what it drops. But what about other smaller pieces of content? Before we move on to the juicy part, let me show you 3 more examples. We had updates such as Akebos Lowlands, Konar, and of course the Alchemical Hydra. And from memory, because of the newest Slayer boss, some of the runes took a big hit and I don't think they recovered for a very long time. Another one that comes to mind is Temporos, which had a positive effect on Dragon Harpoons and Smoldering Stones. And for one of the latest updates that did something similar, we had the Guardians of the Rift, which made a lot of runes crash for a little bit, although some of them recovered just a few weeks later. Now, to a lot of you that might be useless information because it's extremely obvious that any content update to the game might make a few or several items either more valuable or completely destroy them. But these were just a few examples to put into perspective what we are going to talk about. Okay, now we're going to talk about the Tombs of Amascut drops and some of the other items that could be important for the raid from the information we have. Now, remember that all of these items are 100% confirmed to come to the live game, and we are not talking about item proposals like I did in a few videos prior to this one. Also, another very quick reminder that I am not a financial advisor and you should take these with a grain of salt, and you can also brainstorm with me in the comments below. For arguably the most important item from the raid, we have the Shadow of Tumacon. This is a 5-tick two-handed magic staff that will triple your magic accuracy when worn, as well as tripling your magic damage up to a cap of 100%. Because of how this works, pretty much every good magic item outside of weapons and shields will pair greatly with this new staff. If you have the money for it, especially on release, I'm pretty sure you'll be rocking the best in slot magic outfit, which includes things like Ancestral, Tormented Bracelet, Occult Necklace, and much more. Now, I'm not one to tell you to panic buy anything, but it is my very personal opinion that if you don't have Ancestral robes right now, they might keep going up because of the disgusting stats it will provide along with the Shadow of Tumicon. Some people might say that it could go down in price because the staff will make other magic robes more powerful, but remember that the Ancestral robes are the only items with percentage magic damage, which is the key stat we are looking for. Now, does that mean that all one-handed magic weapons and shields will go down? Well, not quite. As you know, the Twisted Bow is obtained from the Chambers of Xeric, and the Scythe of Vitur is obtained from the Theater of Blood. I know you use all combat styles in both raids, specifically in the first one, but if ranged is more useful in Chambers and melee is more useful at ToB, we can assume that the overall use of magic will play a huge role in the Tombs of Amascut, making pretty much all magic items super relevant when fighting the bosses. When it comes to the Masori armor, which will be the new best in slot ranged armor in the game, the only directly affected items might be Armadillo pieces. Looking at them quickly might make some people think that Armadillo is also going to be devalued, but we could also have another Torva situation in our hands, which pretty much means that because of how the Masori armor is going to be repaired with Armadillo pieces, these items are still going to be super relevant not only to fix Masori, but also they're going to be a second best in slot option to farm the raid whenever ranged is needed. On the topic, it is yet to be known if the ranged combat style will be either helpful or even mandatory in the Tombs of Amascut. We don't yet know a lot about the bosses, and we have no information at all about the final boss. But from the pictures we will look at later, we can assume that the Baboon boss will still be weak to a Salve Amulet, but not to Witch combat style. And that the Calphite boss could be weak to the Charis Partisan if we are even able to hit it with melee, since it is flying in the concept art shown by Jagex. So if you have a T-bow, Zerite crossbow, or anything that is super expensive when it comes to melee or ranged, don't sell your items quite yet, but we just have to wait to figure out what's going to be super important for the raid. The next two items are equally as important, so I will start with the Ward of Elidness. This is another item that will be given to you in a broken state for a weaker version, and you will need another item to fix it, being the Arcane Sigil. This is another instance of Jagex wanting to add an objectively better item that we currently have, without making its predecessor irrelevant. So basically after this update, if you have an Arcane Spirit Shield, you will be able to take it to a certain NPC in the game to have the sigil removed, and then use it on the Ward of Elidness. Because of this, it is my opinion that the Arcane Spirit Shield will somewhat keep its value as it is, or even dip in price just a little bit because of the ability to remove the sigil from it. If you were not able to do that, we could have predicted the Arcane Spirit Shield to drop in price because people wanting to sell it for the Ward of Elidness, or even people not really caring about it anymore, since at the moment you get an Arcane Sigil from the Corporeal Beast, you can then sell it to the Grand Exchange for people to make the Ward. Regardless, just like all of the items so far, remember that they are going to be astronomically expensive on release and even a few months down the road, so don't stress too much about not being able to afford them right away. Now, I didn't go too in-depth about one-handed magic weapons because it makes more sense to talk about them here rather than during the Shadow of Tumicon talk, so let's dissect them for a little bit. Like I said before, the introduction of this new two-handed magic staff might seem like it will overshadow every other magic weapon, but with the addition of the Ward of Elidness, all of them will get a pretty decent buff, not only in terms of magic accuracy, but also for a damage bonus, since the Ward will be the first item to provide a set stat for the shield slot. Items like the Harmonized Nightmare Staff, the Kodai Wand, the Sanguinesti Staff, and hell, even the Trident weapons will pair greatly with this new magic shield. With the Ward of Elidness, people might use the Harmonized Nightmare Staff at Zulra for faster times, the Kodai Wand when bursting for more damage and quicker Slayer experience and tasks, and of course with the Sanguinesti when you need to heal up. Regardless, because of this amazing new item, pretty much all one-handed magic weapons will still be fairly relevant, especially for Raids 3, as you are grinding towards the Shadow of Tumicon. And finally we come to the Osmundtim's Fang, which will be a new 5-tick one-handed stab weapon. Think of it as a slower, more powerful rapier. This one is weird, and the one I say I don't have a good prediction for because I really don't know how people value weapon speed and weapon accuracy with strength bonus. The Scythe is also a 5-tick weapon, but using it is fairly expensive, so the Fang might be a good alternative because it's not going to degrade or use charges. Because of the stats, the Fang will be better than the Rapier at bosses with higher defense. But wherever you want to deal quick damage on monsters with low defense, the Rapier will still be a great choice. It is my opinion that the Fang will be a little bit more niche, whereas the Rapier could still be a go-to weapon for Casual Slayer and some bosses, while the Fang will be essential for both the new raid and against the chunkier bosses with higher defense, meaning that the Rapier and other one-handed weapons might not be affected too much. Finally, I'll very quickly talk about the Light Barrier, which will be a new ring that will grant faster special attack regeneration. I don't really think this will crash the price of other useful rings like the Dagonoth rings, Brimstone, or even the Suffering, because those rings will still be super useful everywhere in the game. However, I don't really know how crucial special attacks will be in Raids 3, so if that plays a key role, you can bet it will be fairly expensive and one that will also be pretty helpful to skillers for them to use the special attacks on things like axes, pickaxes, and harpoons. Before we move on to the final topic, which are supplies, I also want to look at a few super expensive items that have lost their hype for quite a while, being the 3rd Age Druidic Robes. If you look at their graph, they went from above max cash all the way down to 1.6 and 1.4 billion respectively. And it's been happening since January of 2022. Coincidentally, when Next was released. If super rich players sold some of these items to be able to afford Torva, they might continue to go down as more people tried to get the new items shortly after release. At the time of making this video, the 3rd Age pickaxe is still above max cash, so only time will tell if it will keep its value, or if players will sell it to afford the new items. And finally, let's talk about supplies. And no, this is not only going to be a short segment telling you that everything is going to go up, but rather I will tell you how you can make money from it. So, obviously, people will be consuming food and potions like absolute degenerates, so if you're planning on camping this on the release, stock up on Sarah Bruce, Super Restores, Anglerfish, Sharks, Karambuan, Super Combat Potions, Ranging Potions, and pretty much everything you use for high-level PDMing. If you're not camping this on the release and you want to capitalize on the update to make some cash, you have to start doing this as soon as possible. Get to farming Toadflax and Snapdragons for those Sarah Brews and Super Restores, and of course some Raynars for Prayer Potions. Same goes for Super Combat and Ranging Potions, so all of their herbs and secondary ingredients will prove to be very profitable. Doing birdhouse runs will also be pretty good to stock up on bird nests, and also related to potions, you can start doing activities in Priffinus like the Corrupted Gauntlets, Volcano, and either Slayer or Skilling, for you to be able to obtain crystal shards to be able to make divine potions. Finally, if you're looking for an AFK activity as you work or study, fishing will be a good way to make some money while paying barely any attention to the game. Alright, so that's pretty much it about the Raids 3 items and supplies, and now let's talk about all the information we know so far before the release of the Tombs of Amascut. And I'm pretty sure nothing else will be released for Jagex to have a pretty spicy launch to let players figure out things on their own. Raids 3 now has an official launch date, and it will be on August the 24th. I have made a few videos on the Tombs of Amascut which you can check out by going to the description down below. One of the most important aspects of this raid will be a brand new mechanic to old school RuneScape by the name of Invocations. This is basically a way to make the raid more difficult for you and your team, in what we can assume will be increase your chance at great rewards. This was inspired by one of RuneScape 3's newest bosses called the Arc-Glycer, which you can customize to make it more difficult as you learn the mechanics. In no particular order, we also have the 4 bosses leading to the final boss at the end of the raid, which this one hasn't been revealed and hopefully it won't be until people see it themselves. First, we have Akka, a big human-like warrior and for which we don't have a lot of information about, so we can't speculate what combat style will be useful here. Next we have Baba, which is a baboon-like creature which looks to be a zombie, and we can assume that things like the Salve Amulet as well as the Crumble Undead spell will play a key role in taking him down. Next we have Kefiri, which is a Calphite or Scarab looking boss, and the only thing that is immediately obvious is that the Keris Partisan will most likely be pretty useful against it. Although in the picture it looks like it's flying, so maybe it could have 2 faces where it also starts walking on the ground for us to damage it with melee. And finally we have my favorite, which is Zebak, a crocodile type monster which looks super cute. So if I ever get the pet from this raid, I will be rocking this look if there's a transmog for it. There are crocodiles in the desert which you can kill normally, so not a lot of information about this one either. Overall, I'm fairly confident that this new content will be incredibly fun, not only for the best players in the game, but also for people looking to get their first bit of experience with raiding. And it will hopefully be a nice difficulty spike everyone can get used to. Ladies and gentlemen, that's pretty much it for this video. Thank you so much for watching and making it this far. I want to give a massive thank you to all of my channel members for joining this amazing project. You honestly have no idea how much your support means to this humble Mexican, and I hope to keep providing amazing content for you all. If you want to support this channel further, you can click the join button below to see all of the cool perks and rewards you can get out of your monetary pledge. In the next one, I will go over my top 10 tips to escape the mid-game in old school RuneScape, since I have been getting a lot of questions about how to know if your account is going the right direction. I hope you guys have an amazing week, and I will see you then. Peace.